Good evening and welcome to the November 10th, 2020, 6:30 City Council meeting. We do have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. And would you please join me in a moment of silence? And the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. City Clerk, would you read, you moved. City Clerk, would you please read the procedures for public comment?
Yes, sir. Individuals wishing to speak on public and non-public hearing agenda items must complete a sign-up card and present it to the clerk prior to the item being introduced. Those wishing to speak on quasi-judicial public hearings must complete a sign-up card and sign the oath. Sign-up and oath cards are available on the table in the council chamber. Individuals wishing to speak on non-agenda items may do so under petitions from the public present. This opportunity is offered twice in the meeting, and individuals may speak at either the first or second petitions, but not both. No sign-up card is required. Citizens shall not comment on any issue more than once during the meeting. All comments except petitions and requests must address a pending issue, and citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak on all items. Citizens wishing to speak on the consent agenda must submit a comment card identifying the items of interest. Speakers shall be given 3 minutes per item. However, citizens wishing to speak on more than 3 consent agenda items shall be limited to speak for a total of 10 minutes, regardless of the number of items identified.
Thank you, City Clerk. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting on August 25th, September 22nd, and October 13th, 2020.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Minutes are passed. City Manager, special recognitions, presentations, boards, and commissions.
Yes, sir. We have no special recognition or presentations. The next agenda item is 6A, and it's the North Brevard Library District Board Semi-Annual Report is written, and there's no action required from council on this.
No action required. We move to the next one. Thank you.
We're on to 6B, which is the Student Advisory Council is made up of 12 members, 8 of which are public high school students, and the other 4 are from the North Brevard Homeschool Association. The Titusville Student Advisory Council quorum is 5 members that must be physically present to hold a meeting as outlined by Resolution 1-2017. At the end of October 2020, City Resolution 16-2020 and the Governor's Executive Order as previously applicable to local government meetings and used communications media technology to constitute a quorum has expired. Astronaut and Titusville High Schools via Brevard Public School Policy currently holds the position not to allow their 8 students to attend the Titusville Student Advisory Council meetings in person, physically being present, which presents a challenge to the board's quorum requirement. For one of the principals of Brevard County Schools has not changed the restrictions on student field trips and gatherings outside of the schools. All meetings are continuing to occur via virtual platforms. For the above reasons, staff proposes to temporarily suspend the Titusville Student Advisory Council until Brevard County Public Schools notifies the city that they will allow their students to resume attending the Titusville Student Advisory Council meetings in person and should facilitate having a physical quorum of at least 5 members present. Alternatively, staff seeks direction from council if other options other than temporary suspension for this council may be desired.
Okay, thank you. Member Jordan.
Oh, how do I?
Okay. Well, you can't do that. I can't do that. Okay. Do we have any cards on this item?
No, sir.
Do we have any direction from council?
Given our climate right now, I really don't think we have any other choice than to suspend Titusville Student Advisory Council until they can safely meet. So my suggestion, my motion would be to temporarily suspend them until the Brevard Public Schools permit their members to resume attending the task meetings.
Second.
And before we go to that motion, let me just have this discussion. And we've talked about things like this in the past, and I can tell you that it even came up, city manager can recall when I spoke down in our meeting in Melbourne, that we are limited what we can do with schools right now. And Member Jordan, you're probably very aware of that, and Member Stokel as well. I know that there was a big plan that I was going to be heading a mentoring program at Titusville High School, and can't do it. So this really, to me, probably has got taken longer to get here than I thought it would. So with that in mind, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. City manager.
Next item is petitions and requests from the public present that are on non-agenda items.
Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Just want to acknowledge that we did receive one email from Stan Johnston, and I believe everyone should have a copy of that.
Yes, I do. Do we all have that?
Yep.
Okay, so we all have that. Thank you very much. Mr. Johnston, I think you were heading that way. Hit your mic, buddy. Get that red light on. There you go. Okay, it's good. They did it in the back. You're set.
Okay, 860 Poinsett Avenue. I'm here as a professional engineer, and I'm reporting on part of that email that I sent you. Number 2, it says a $70,000 report by Geosyntec engineers, denied by Geosyntec, paid for by the city, without an invoice, without a contract to do the work. This non-existent imaginary report, it says that according to, let's say, Mrs. Nelson and other people, indicates that the city had my correspondence reviewed from 2012 and 2019 and demonstrates that I'm just an incompetent, stupid engineer because of so many errors and so forth and untruths. Unfortunately, the city records manager, after 20 months, has still been unable to locate the contact report and invoice for the work. This is an ongoing outrageous, malicious fraud against me by city manager, all council members, the city attorney, and others that harms me, city employees, the city morale, my clients, the general public. And I'm saying that this malicious fraud is easily confirmed through the Freedom of Information Act by contacting the city records manager or the city clerk. Now what I'm saying is that city council is saying is, for example, that the department, like, for example, the purchasing contract department are liars. Liars, because they can't find that thing. There's no contract. You also say the records manager, city records manager is a liar. Maybe you should fire her because she can't find that thing. You guys are guilty of fraud. It just doesn't exist. I know you can just say, well, you say, I didn't say anything about it. It's been going on for 20 months now. And then nobody in this room ever prepared a contract. You have to have a contract to do the work. Geosyntec said they didn't do it. So anyhow, what you might think you're not guilty if you don't say anything. Well, of course, Ms. Nelson, what she was doing, she was nodding her head all during that discussion on February 12th, 2019. So she knows what's going on. She knows she's lying. She knows she's lying. For example, when Walt Johnson says, hey, city attorney, he gave you 8 copies of that thing. Well, city attorney knows he's lying. City attorney's lying because he doesn't say anything about it. So this is incredibly dishonest, and I'll tell you what, it's not doing any good for anybody in the city. For example, when I wrote all these letters, for example, to engineering regarding engineering issues and so forth, the engineering department, they know.
Your time is up, sir.
May I ask for more time?
I see no motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, please. Name and address. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm Pastor Bernard Wright of the Bethlehem Baptist Church. My address is 1610 Banana Drive, Titusville, Florida. I have a small concern. On my street and the street behind me, Date, on where the street abrupts the grass, there's water there. And it's been there for some time, right in the curb, right there, right along the street. There's cracks in the street. Some kind of oil or something is coming up out of the ground. It's creating slime, tadpoles, which turn into mosquitoes right alongside the road. When you walk out to your mailbox, if you're not careful, you'll fall, you'll slip and fall. I've almost fallen a couple of times. We had somebody from the city to come out yesterday in a truck, and he brushed the dirt out of the crevices, out of the sides. But as fast as he would brush the mud out, as fast as he would brush the mud out, it would roll right back into the corners of the street. On the corner of Vista and Banana, there is a sinkhole, small sinkhole. It was larger. I spoke to the owner today, and he told me that the streets had been paved. I don't know. I've only been there about 18 months. But he said that the streets had been paved before. And he asked the guys that were repairing it, would they fix the hole before they repave it? And he said that they were just told that they would just fix the street. And the hole is coming back again. My other neighbor at 1605 says that an engineer from the city was supposed to come out and look at it to see what was causing this water. I was also informed that in that area there was once a golf course there. I don't know anything about that. I was just told that some way, somehow, something is coming up out of the ground and getting into the streets and getting into it right there on the edge of the street. And it's causing a major problem. And I don't care. I've gone out and tried to use my blower and blow it down the road so it'll go into the ditch or go into the I don't know what you call that thing. But anyway, I don't care how much I blow it, the water will run down towards the place where the receptacle is supposed to go in. But before I can get the water down there, the water is back there again. And it's happened over and over and over again. You would think that it's raining. The street stays wet all of the time. And I was just wondering, is there something that the city can do about it?
What's it? Could you repeat the streets again?
Banana Drive.
Where is that exactly?
Titusville Village? Titus Landing. Titusville
Village. Okay.
Titus Village. I heard it, the buzzer go off. May I have some more time just to explain this?
Somebody make that motion?
Couple of minutes.
2 more minutes?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Do I have a second? Approve. All in favor?
Yes.
I mean, we got homes from $250,000 to almost $500,000 in that area. And I don't think it's fair for us to have to continue to go through that over and over and over again.
City manager? I don't see anybody here we can point to, so can you kind of guide us on that?
Yeah, we'll take a look at it, sir.
Okay, so I guess tomorrow you'll talk to Kevin, go from there.
It's either Water Resources or Kevin, so yeah, we'll take a look at it.
I'm no expert, but what I like to do is drive by and see what we're talking about, wheres and the whats and all that stuff, but I would at least like to do that, and I know city manager will then get with the people that do that, and they'll be out there and follow up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions of me before I sit down?
Hey, you did good.
Thank you.
Any more petitions and requests? City manager.
Yes, sir. We're on to consent agenda. City Council and Vice Mayor, does anybody want to pull any of the items from consent? City Clerk, are there any cards for consent?
We have one individual that has 5 cards on consent.
Okay. With your permission, I'd like to read the consent agenda items for the record, and then we'll do
And then we'll
cards.
move to the cards.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Consent agenda item 8A, approve the award of a contract to Coherent Associates LLC in the amount of $30,000 for historic booklet and walking tour project, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Consent agenda item 8B, authorize staff to apply for East Coast Greenway designation for the Titusville Downtown Connector Trail and its inclusion in the East Coast Greenway Trail system, and authorize the mayor to sign a letter on behalf of the City Council endorsing this designation. Consent agenda item 8C, approve the Bulletproof Vest Award in the amount of $10,938.75 and associated budget amendment. Consent agenda item 8D, approve the purchase and installation of 8 consoles for the Titusville Police Department Communications Center from the state contract to vendor XBit for the amount of $37,833. Consent agenda item 8E, adopt resolution 34-2020 declaring the City Council will hold a public hearing to consider vacating and abandoning and discontinuing certain rights of way on December 8, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers located at 555 South Washington Avenue. Consent agenda item 8F, approve the wage reopener in accordance with Article 38 of the collective bargaining agreement between the Fraternal Order of Police and the City of Titusville. And consent agenda item 8G, approve the wage reopener in accordance with Article 38 of the collective bargaining agreement between the Fraternal Order of Police Lieutenants and the City of Titusville.
Thank you, sir. Anyone who has cards in at this time, this would be the time to come up. I would like to hear, if I could, City Clerk, the items that the speaker will be speaking to.
Yes, sir. Mr. Johnston, Stan Johnston, has a card on items A, C, E, F, and G.
Okay. Take a break. Yep, you're the man.
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. I'm not speaking as an expert on these items, but I have some concern because I have been watching some council meetings, and I'm take, for example, let's go 8E and 8F. No, 8F and FG. They have to do with collective bargaining agreements. And in my notes, I have written, it says that the fiscal impacts are within the budgeted amount adopted by City Council. This quotation. And another quotation I have is, funds are budgeted throughout police department. I can't read my writing. The police department, something like anyhow, seeking accountants. Anyhow, what's the problem? The issue is here is that the word budget is used and money is used and so forth. And what I've just shared with you at the CRA meeting is that the city doesn't have a balanced budget. When we talk about budgeting, we're talking about deficit spending. And we already know from April the 28th, 2020, is that the internal auditor said, we've got a problem. We got, and I showed you before, we had the $65 million, which equates to $1,400 owed by every man, woman, and child. That's the $65 million. And plus I shared with you $20 million, just silver downtown. So the city of Titusville does not have a balanced budget, and it hasn't been doing it for years, and it's been concealing it. So when we talk about this collective bargaining agreement, and we're talking about budgeting, it's busted. The budget is busted, and the public doesn't know this. So I'm here right now. I'm standing at this podium, and I'm telling you, the city does not have the revenues do not meet expenses. Although I've been to workshops this year, in which it said revenues meets expenses. The budget is balanced. But it's not true. It's not true big time. So the city of Titusville is overspending. So something needs to be looked into. What especially needs to be looked into is the honesty of Mr. Diesel, Mr. Jordan, Ms. Nelson, Dr. Stokel, city manager. You're not being honest when you don't tell the people, when you hide this from the public. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So I would like you to look onto it. There's other things that are of problems as far as this honesty goes. But what happened on April the 28th, 2020, is I want to tell you why Jolynn Nelson and Sarah Stokel said what they said on April the 28th. That's when the internal auditors report. Here's why they said what they said. They said, number one, that they said what they said because they're afraid of the truth. Afraid of the truth, you're cowards of the truth. Number two, I wrote, he says, you don't want the voters to know the truth. In other words, about the budget. It's just not balanced at all. And number three, I wrote, you do not want the public and voters to know that you and all other council members know. And they're hiding this embarrassing $65 million debt. That's a promise to pay. And you're afraid of this. Number four, I wrote, I say, you do not want the public and voters to know that you and all other council members unanimously favor this cover-up and this concealment because it appears that you are somehow also, you're avoiding or circumventing for the Florida Sunshine Law. I mean, it's unanimous. Just as similar as you have the unanimous as this on this.
Clerk, stop the clock. See, I said it for you.
Yes, sir.
Which one are you talking about now?
The E and F is what I started out with.
You started off E and F, and now I'm lost. Like I told you before, if you'll stay on topic, I got a shot.
Okay, all right. Well,
are you good?
Maybe I did drift a little bit.
Oh, don't drift on me, and I'm going to get you back.
Okay.
All right, let's start the clock.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you. All right. So let me go back to 8A. 8A has to do with award proposal for historic booklet. And I said...
You're 8A now?
Yes, sir.
I'm following you.
And that's neither. I put neither for that.
Neither, okay.
And for 8C...
8C.
8C is... I approve that. Approve 8C.
Okay.
The resolution for right-of-way, that's questionable because I tell you what you need to look at. In that area, you need to look at the drainage because there's some squirrely drainage going on in there, and the city should look at the drainage, if there's drainage problems in that area, before abandoning that right-of-way.
And that's E?
That's E.
Okay.
That's E. Now, on 8F and G, now I mentioned to you about the fiscal impacts. You're missing the fiscal impacts, and so it's important for you to know that, by golly, your auditor disagrees with what's going on here. And that was April the 28th. And you need to recognize that. And also on March the 12th, Bridget Clements, she came forward, she said, hey, we got a problem. We got a problem with OPEB. She said that. Now, both of these items have to do with salary and wages. And these affect OPEB. And we already know that it's either $4 or $5 million already were unfunded for police OPEB benefits. So we're working on OPEB right here. We're working on that $65 million when we pass 8F and 8FG. And it should be recognized by this council that, by golly, this affects our unfunded liability. It does. And when we can continue to ignore and say that we're balancing our budget, it's just not true. There's no truth to it at all. And I just talked to another mayor, not in this city. He said, by golly, when that stuff comes up, I'll tell you what, I avoid that stuff because I'll never get elected if I tell the people what's going on. So that's another mayor, another state. So it's a problem, but the people should know about it. The public needs to know about it. This guy's a friend of mine. Went to school with him. He was a mayor. He said, by golly, this is a problem. I don't want to bring it up. I'll never get reelected if I bring it up. So it's not surprising that the city of Titusville wants to do the same thing. Hide it. You need to admit it. Admit it. Embrace it. I tell you what, I pray for you guys often, and you need to straighten up. This dishonesty's gone too far. So in other words, on this particular item, it involves your dishonesty to the public. It's not good. So I have, on that letter I sent to you that involves this is that my children and grandchildren are going to grow up in this place. I don't want this nonsense to be going on. I want you to be truthful to the public. This is my hometown. 5 generations, my family, my wife's family here. I don't know how many of y'all can compete with that. Certainly not. Mr. Larice, what does he care? He'll be gone about 7 years. So I want y'all to really consider this. Consider what's going on in the city and the truth of this honesty and so forth that's going on. And especially on these particular items, I'm talking about the OPEB liability or busting our budget. OPEB has directly to do with E, F, and G. And we've got, and I showed you before, 65 plus 20 million. That's just part of it. We've got problems. So let's tell the public the truth. Thank you for allowing me to express these issues.
Thank you.
Okay. God bless you.
Any other cards? No, sir. Okay, City Manager, we move on to the ordinance.
You'll need a vote.
Oh, okay, thank you. Tradition
So
going
I'd
here.
move to approve items, the consent agenda, items A through G.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
And we're on to item 9A, which is ordinance 23-2020, home-based businesses, and City Attorney will read the ordinance.
Ordinance number 23-2020, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 28 zoning, Section 28-360 home-based business, by amending the list of home-based businesses permitted and prohibited within residential areas, by permitting certain home-based businesses to have clients on site, by establishing conditions under which businesses may operate, and by clarifying terminology, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, for an effective date, and for incorporation into the code.
This is the first reading and the first public hearing of ordinance 23-2020. The second reading and public hearing is scheduled for November 24th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. On November 4th, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of this action, and I believe there is one card on this particular item.
Okay, thank you. Call the card.
Deidre Waller?
Good evening.
Hey, Deidre.
I'm
Hey.
Deidre Waller, and I am at 1105 Wedgwood Lane, Titusville 32780. And the only question that I had with this was, once it is approved, what would be the effective date and the time of the permitting information? That's really all I had questions on tonight.
And I'll move that to Ms. Busaka, please.
Well, first, this is the first reading.
Yes.
It'll come back at the next meeting on the 24th.
Okay.
And if it's approved, the ordinance will be effective upon signing, which would be, usually the mayor comes in the next day or so to sign it.
Okay.
And the ordinance will become effective then.
Okay.
So in approximately 2 weeks, if passed.
Okay.
And then staff could answer, I don't know, about coming in and then applying and giving, but the ordinance will be effective in about 2 weeks.
Okay. And someone will notify me? Or okay.
You could certainly,
Okay. That's all I really
I
have.
remember, Nelson, you have something?
I did. In reading the statute, there's a ordinance. There's one section that the administrator may require that any home-based business obtain a conditional use permit. And I'm not sure we really want that in there. I'm not sure that staff would like that in there. Sort of putting a burden on them.
Well,
So I would suggest that we take that part out.
I guess we would want to hear from staff on that. How do you feel about that, Ms. Busaka?
Ms. Busaka would prefer not to have to make that administrative decision.
And I get that, and I do. But I guess what I want to know is, do you think it's a good idea, or you don't think it's a good idea, or it's either way?
No, sir, I don't think it's a good idea to put that kind of requirement on staff unless there is a great deal more guidance in the code. And right now there's no specifics, but so I think that it's either a limited use or it's a conditional use. I think that's easier on the staff and it's easier on the citizens to know what's going to happen. I think that there's a lot of potential for different interpretations depending on the staff that's in the seat. So I would recommend that if the council wants to make all of these conditional uses, then that would be the way to go. But giving the administrator that kind of flexibility, I don't necessarily believe is a good idea.
And right now, let me say, right now, we've got some guidance. You know, you comply with a set of rules and regulations, you get your limited use. And if there's a problem, my understanding is the city can come back and revoke that.
That's correct. What this proposed language says is that on an annual basis, that when they come in for a reapplication, renewal, that they could review that. That would require a code enforcement finding, so it wouldn't be just a matter of someone having a complaint, but there would actually have to be given time to cure the complaint and then go to code enforcement and go to either the magistrate or the code board and have a specific finding that this was an issue. And then so I think that gives due process to the individual and time to correct any outstanding problems.
I would agree.
So my thought is we need to take that part out.
Member Stokel.
Yeah, along with that, my question was, why was it put in there to begin with?
Originally, it was part of the Brevard County Code, and there was some discussion at the last meeting that it might be worthy of further consideration. It was not necessarily a recommendation, so I think that the council is doing just what they thought they would do, which is to think about this more.
Okay. And I do think that there is additional protection in here should something get approved and then something does go wrong. We do have enough protection in here, so I'm okay with that.
So no matter what direction we go, we're not going to slow her down? This will go straight forward?
Yes, sir, that's right. It was advertised in such a way that this could certainly be removed.
Okay. Then I would say, do you want to... Member Nelson, would you like to move that direction?
We don't need a motion on that.
Okay.
Right. We have that direction. You'll be voting on this at your next meeting.
Right, okay, that's right. We don't need a motion. That's right.
And you'll
So
be
we're just
doing that at your
directing.
next meeting. You can
All
certainly.
right, so right now it's just giving the information. And that's why we have first readings. And it won't slow you down. Okay?
Yes.
You good?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
I'm sorry, I have a question for you.
Sir.
He just popped up. I just wanted to be known. He just popped up. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
right. I can't remember, what are you doing, fingernails?
Nails.
Are you planning on selling fingernail polish or anything like that?
I never sold polish. I don't sell products.
So you're not going to sell any kind of commodity or anything like that? Okay, because that's part
That's
of
too
this.
much work for me. I'm already working 8 to 5.
Sorry, just asking. Well, I was just wondering because we do have this as no commodities will
Yeah,
be
I
sold.
saw
so-
that in there. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't sell products.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, I also wanted to point out P&Z reviewed this item at their meeting, and they did have several concerns they wanted to make sure that you were aware of. And certainly Ms. Pisaka could raise that at this point if you'd like to have that discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to let you know that the motion in its complete language is that the approve expanding home-based businesses as limited uses by allowing clients in homes with the expression of concerns regarding hours of operation, full-time versus part-time, types of uses allowed, code enforcement concerns, prohibiting chemicals, auxiliary buildings, and commercial competition. And I can give you more information from the minutes if you have specific questions about any of those concerns.
I don't. And I'm looking here to see if anybody else has any questions on that. Okay, then at first reading, we've given our input, we've been informed, we move forward. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And on to agenda item 9B, which is ordinance 24-2020 regarding mobile vendors in public zoning, P zoning, and the city attorney will read the ordinance.
Ordinance number 24, 2020. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to clarify application requirements for mobile vendors and to permit mobile vendors and special event vendors on land zone public under certain conditions by amending Chapter 11 licenses and business regulations, specifically amending sections 11-332 mobile vendors and 11-340 special event vendors, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, for an effective date, and for incorporation into the code.
This is the first reading and first public hearing of Ordinance 24, 2020. The second reading and second public hearing is scheduled for November 24th, 2020 at 6:30. And Ms. Pisak is available to answer any questions that you may have. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this item at their November meeting unanimously.
As noted, this is also a first reading. Do we have any cards? Anybody from the council want to have input? Any questions for Ms. Busaka? We are good. We move to the next one.
We're on item 9C, which is public hearing for ordinance number 19, 2020, and the city attorney will read that item.
Ordinance number 19, 2020. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to replace obsolete references of terms and code provisions to ensure internal consistency by amending Chapter 5, Animals, specifically amending Section 5-105, Revocation of Permit, Chapter 12, Miscellaneous Offenses, specifically amending Section 12-13, Restrictions on Parking, Recreational Vehicles, and Other Vehicles on Public Lands at certain times, Chapter 17, Streets, Sidewalks, and Certain Other Public Places, specifically amending Sections 17-1, Encroachment on Public Rights-of-Way, 17-33, Vacating and Abandoning Streets and Alleys, and 17-86, Underground Installation, Relocation. Chapter 21, Utilities, specifically Sections 21-1, Lots served by governmentally owned water, sewer, reclaimed water lines, 21-26, Unauthorized use of city water, injuring waterworks properties and facilities, and 21-66, Enforcement and Penalties. Chapter 28, Zoning, specifically Sections 28-16, Pre-existing Conditions, and 28-44, Sub-districts described. Chapter 29, Special Districts and Overlays, specifically Section 29-141, Commercially Zoned Districts located in low-intensity commercial land use categories. And Chapter 30, Development Standards, specifically Sections 30-382C, Design, and 34-393B, Applicability of Ordinance and Resolutions of City to Development, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
Staff has identified a number of corrections to the code references. The proposed ordinance makes the needed corrections. There are no substantive or policy amendments to the code being proposed. On October 21st, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this as written unanimously, and Ms. Busaka is available to answer questions that council may have.
And this is the final public hearing. Ms. Busaka, is there anything you want to add?
Just to say that as the code was updated, there were just several chapter numbers that were not corrected, and that's what this is.
And having gone over this like everyone else has, it just looks like a great cleanup. And I appreciate that. Are there any cards on this issue? No, sir. Any council members? Do we have a motion?
I've moved to approval. Were you first?
No,
You sure?
I'm never first.
Okay.
Okay. Moved.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Move to approve ordinance number 19-2020, correcting references of terms and code provisions.
We have a motion. Need a second? Second. I have a second. Roll call vote.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Nelson? Yes. Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
On to item 9D, which is ordinance 2020, removing references to obsolete zoning districts, and the city attorney will read that ordinance.
Ordinance number 2020. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to remove references to obsolete zoning districts, Commercial Marina CM, and Central Business District CBD by amending Chapter 11 Licenses and Business Regulations, specifically amending Sections 11-332 Mobile Vendors, 11-340 Special Events Vendor, 11-341 seasonal sales vendor, 11-516 temporary auto sales and shows, amending Chapter 27 general provisions, specifically amending Section 27-30 additional requirements for zoning districts consistent with downtown mixed-use land use, amending Chapter 37 definitions, specifically amending Section 37.1 definitions by clarifying the permissible zoning districts, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
Ordinance 31-2010 repealed the central business district zoning and replaced that district with the downtown mixed-use district. Ordinance 27-2016 removed the commercial marina zoning district from the land development regulations because the zoning designation has never been applied within the city. Subsequently, staff has identified several instances in which these references remain in the code. The proposed ordinance will delete these references. On October 21st, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously approved as written. This is your final public hearing of Ordinance 20-2020.
I almost wonder if we should pass anything that's 20-20-20. But anyway, with that said, Ms. Busaka, first of all, again, thank you for this tedious task that you and your staff, as you would call them, your team, did. It's very obvious this was tedious and difficult, and I appreciate it. That being said, do you have anything to add on this right now?
This is the most boring ordinance I've ever written.
As I said, tedious. So with that, are there any cards? Yes, sir. And council? No comment or no lights on council. We have a motion for this ordinance. Question is, do we have an ordinance motion?
Move to approve ordinance number 20-2020, removing references to obsolete zoning districts.
I have a motion from Member Nelson, second by Member Jordan, and we need a roll call vote.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Nelson? Yes. Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
And we're on to 9E, which is the public hearing for ordinance 21-2020. I'm sorry, my microphone was off.
Ordinance number 21-2020, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending the application classifications for site plans, by amending Chapter 34 procedures, specifically amending Section 34-214 application classifications and review schedules, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
On August 25th, 2020, Council approved advisability for staff to reassess the thresholds for site plan review and more appropriately match the level of review to the potential impacts of the development. The attached ordinance makes the following changes: clarification of improvement terms, clarification of thresholds for Class 1 review, minor improvements, removal of accessory structures less than 1,000 square feet from Class 1 threshold, clarification of threshold for parking lot improvements, and a combination of 3 or more minor improvements moved to clarify that Class 2 review is required. On October 21st, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of ordinance, and this is your final public hearing of ordinance 21-2020.
Correct. And as noted, the final hearing. So again, Ms. Busaka, do you have anything to add? Any cards on this issue?
Yes, sir.
And council comments, questions? I see none. I will ask for a motion. Member Jordan?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 21-2020 relating to site plan review thresholds.
And a second. We have a motion and a second. I need a roll call vote.
Member Nelson? Yes. Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
On to item 9F, which is ordinance 22-2020 relating to the minimum lot size for townhomes. And City Attorney will read the ordinance.
Ordinance number 22-2020, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to correct internal inconsistencies and eliminate the minimum 5-acre lot size for townhomes and multifamily zoning districts by amending Chapter 28 zoning, Section 28-81 townhomes, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, for an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
In response to a citizen's request at the July 28, 2020 meeting, City Council approved advisability to review the minimum lot size for townhomes. Currently, townhomes are limited to uses within the DMU, downtown mixed use, urban mixed use, UMU, Shoreline Mixed Use, SMU, Indian River City Neighborhood Residential, IRCNR, without a minimum lot size. In multifamily medium density R2 and multifamily high density R3 zoning districts, which permits multifamily to a maximum of 35 feet in height, there is a 5-acre minimum lot requirement. The 5-acre minimum lot requirement is restricting the use of townhomes for infill and redevelopment projects. Examples of townhome developments are attached in your file. Staff has researched and identified that between 1963 and 1992, the 5-acre minimum lot size was not included in the code. The 5-acre minimum lot size was included in Ordinance 26, 1997, adopted on August 26, 1997. Staff is unable to determine the reason for the additional 5-acre minimum. At the October 21st, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended tabling to the next regular meeting. The Commission requested an analysis of all infill lots in the city that would be impacted by the proposed code change. On November 4th, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of this ordinance. And this is your final on this.
And again, we'll hit the merry-go-round again, and final approval here. Ms. Busaka?
Only if there are questions.
I would say, before I even see if there's any cards, this is one that has been bounced around a little bit and has been in need since I first got on here, and some of it didn't make sense in the first place, and this one probably wasn't as tedious and was a little more interesting, and it looks like a good change for me, to me. Are there any cards? And council, any comments, questions? I see no lights. Do I have a motion?
Thank you, Councilmember Jolene Nelson. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 22-2020 relating to minimum lot size for townhomes.
I have a motion by Member Jordan. Second by Member Nelson. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
And please allow me to interject before you go to the next one. Just for the record, and I appreciate it very much, but on occasion I'm hearing people say, Mayor, I appreciate it. But just for the respect level, I am the Vice Mayor at this time. So thank you so very, very much.
On to the next agenda item. There is no first readings, no old business. On to 12A, which was heard by the CRA earlier. And this is the agreement with the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Merritt Island Wildlife Association to utilize space in the downtown Welcome Center as the refuge's temporary visitors center.
And the next step is?
Vote on it.
I'm sorry?
Vote.
Okay, so do we have cards on this issue? Yes, sir. And Ms. Busaka, you can't even help me with this one, can you?
I think that the attorney would be the gentleman
Okay.
to ask.
Obviously, my feeling on this came out earlier when I said win, win, win as many times as I could. City Attorney, is there anything you want to add?
No, sir. If council is interested in such an agreement, then you'll provide the direction to come back to you with an agreement to allow this to happen for your consideration
Okay, so
at your next meeting.
we're looking at advising me on this issue.
Correct. If I receive that advisement, we will prepare an agreement for your consideration at your next meeting to vote.
And certainly any council members who want to add something to that. But again, continuing on from the CRA meeting, win, win, win. Member Nelson?
I was just going to say, yeah, I think the direction is let's go forward.
Any other comments? Okay. City Manager, we move to the next item.
Yes, sir. Next item is petitions and requests from the public present on non-agenda items.
Anybody coming for petitions and requests? Any of you two coming up? Because you're it.
We're not taking your job.
That happens, I know. Okay, then.
Next item, sir, is the mayor and council reports with the mayor's report attached as part of your agenda and the council reports.
And this is where I would call it something that we have evolved into from when I first got on. I was telling City Manager when we first got on, it was it was hard to get in sometimes. What I really like is kind of like an around the table. So I can certainly go by the member Jordan's first.
Really? I am so touched. Calm down. It's okay. I actually only have one thing, and I'm very happy to say that I just want to congratulate Dr. Sarah Stokel on her win to her council seat. Congratulations for sure. That's all I have, sir.
Well, I got stuff on this board right now that I've never seen before. So we'll do a show of hands if somebody has something else to say, because I don't know what this is. Go ahead, Member Stokel.
Yep, I was just going to share, normally this time in November, I would attend the Florida League of Cities Legislative Conference. They are hosting it in Orlando, but they also have a call-in option, so I will be calling in for my portion with the municipal administration, where we will finalize our legislative priorities. And once again, focusing on short-term rentals, being allowed to legislate smoking or not smoking in our parks, which we can't right now, and in cybersecurity. So I will keep you guys posted on how that goes.
Thank you. Anything? Okay.
Pass.
Okay. Then I would just simply add to what Member Jordan said, congratulations, Member Stokel, and congratulations to new Member Robinson. It was a joy to get to speak with him the night of his victory and speak with Member Stokel as well. And I would add that you have to add that I'm proud of the other two people who ran as well, because what makes us a quality city that we are is having quality people run for these offices. And I'm very excited to have Member Stokel back and Member Robinson coming back, our Member-elect Robinson. But again, my hat's off to the efforts of all who ran in our council. With that, we move to...
Yes, sir. To the city manager's report. I have no action items, but I do have a couple discussion points that I'd like to go over with council. And just the upcoming on the 24th, it would be a very busy day for you. Got to speak here, Scott. The last regular council meeting of the current council is at 10:30 a.m. on November 24th in City Hall. At 11 o'clock on the 24th, we will swear in the new city council. And then I'm not sure that we'll have a 5:30 or not yet, but then your first regular scheduled meeting for the city council will be on November 24th at 6:30 p.m. And we're working the logistics on the swearing in to make sure that we have the social distance spacing appropriate. We may have to do some timing as we prepare the agenda for that particular swearing in that says mayor swear in time block, and then take a 5-minute change to allow people to come in and change out. Member Stokel swearing in, and then Member Robinson swearing in.
And I was going to bring that up. You're very good about being on top of those things. Just from my visual here, we up here would be able to stay through the swearing in. We would just switch out the people, the friends, and the families.
Yes, sir. Currently, we can seat 35 in the chamber, and we have additional seating downstairs. But I would think that whomever would want to see the new members sworn in would like to see them physically being sworn in here in the chambers themselves.
Absolutely. And whatever we got to do to make that work.
Yes, sir. And we will probably forego the traditional picture that we take during that meeting, because I don't know that masks would look, I think it'd look goofy. So we'll find a time to prepare that formal picture of the new council once hopefully we are out of these masks. My next item is annually we do a Christmas tree lighting ceremony out in front of City Hall. We have partnered with Sculptor Charter School in the past to have their children come sing, and others as we lead into the holiday season. Sculptor is not allowing their students to participate this year. I would recommend that we go ahead and not cancel, but postpone till next year the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony. We still will put the Christmas tree up. We'll still have the one in the lobby and everything, but what I would recommend is postponing the formal lighting ceremony till 2021.
I would, it's kind of nice to have this mic in front of me. I can go first sometimes. So I'm so used to going third or fourth and just repeating. But I think we have a pretty good idea where this council stands. And again, I'll go back to the discussion we had on fireworks, and everybody knows where I was on that. I feel like at this time, I would agree with that. I hate that, but I would agree with that. I don't think that it's the right time or the right place or the right sponsor, so to speak, for such a close event. And I'll just leave it at that. And do I have anybody else with it? There we go.
Well, I certainly agree with you because we certainly need to be safe. But I do have a question as far as the parade is concerned. Have you heard anything about that?
Just from social media that the Kiwanis Club is preparing to do a virtual parade. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, what is that?
I'll just add to that because my sister's on that committee, and I asked that question probably a month ago. And so then I went to, actually, she may have heard me, because then she came to me and said that they're not feeling it's the right thing to do, and we're going to go virtual parade. I said the same thing. What's a virtual parade?
Virtual, yeah.
No one's really giving me a good answer on a virtual parade, and I and quite honestly, I know that because we don't run it, the Kiwanis, but it will be noted because it's come to me many times already. Well, they're having a parade in Port St. John. We're not putting that parade on. That's all I can say about that. I think that it's very unfortunate that there's so much going on that this is just that year. And hopefully next year it's a whole new ball game. We can have bigger parades, bigger fireworks, bigger everything.
Got to bring that fireworks in.
And Member Jordan, I know you're on the parish board, and I believe they've also postponed theirs.
Yeah, we postponed it. Yeah. So.
Okay. Is there anything else, City Attorney?
No, wait, I got one more, actually two more discussion items for your consideration. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, there was further discussion about allowing members to phone in after the physical quorum had been established by that particular board. City Attorney can fill you in, and again, as we discussed at the last meeting on what the expiration of the governor's executive order and the Attorney General's opinion at this point.
Correct. If you recall, you passed Resolution 16-2020, which dealt with procedures, and that was tied to the Governor's Order 2069, which relaxed the requirement of a physical quorum. So Council had passed Resolution 16-2020 that provided meeting procedures that would be followed. That expired November 1st, 2020 with the expiration of Executive Order 20-69. So if Council's inclined, you could consider a follow-on resolution to address meeting procedures such as social distancing in the chambers as you see now. We also dealt with providing audio and video feed to the meeting within City Hall if we have an overflow. Currently that resolution restricted the use of tripods, props, easels in chambers because of COVID and not knowing where the items maybe had been. You had allowed submittal of written comments on agenda items for those people who may not feel comfortable coming and submitting those items. You had also authorized the city manager to institute means and methods to facilitate public participation consistent with your guidelines. So that would allow him, when you establish those guidelines, to do what he needs to do for the social distancing, the chairs, the TV. All that was included in that resolution, which is now expired. So if you're inclined, I could come back with a resolution that addresses those items. Of course, it would not contain the communications media technology participation because that is no longer allowed. You have to have a physical quorum. But these other items for participation could be addressed.
And I would like to, as you recall, the city is still under a state of emergency. So I would like to affix this, if council wants to do this resolution, affix this to when we go ahead and cancel the state of emergency for the city itself. And currently, the other cities within the county are all following the county's lead, and the county is following the state's lead. So I think that's where we're at with that. But I think affixing that to the state of emergency is the right thing to do.
I would agree with you, City Manager. The main thing I want to see happen in plain plain language, is that if somebody is uncomfortable being here and they have reason not to be here, I would like to be able to make it work that they don't have to be here. And again, I absolutely sometimes like to think that we're getting better and it's going away, and it's not going away. It's not going away, and not yet. I'm not trying to be negative. It's going to go away someday. But right now, this is not the time to say, you guys who feel like you're in danger and, you know, perhaps are I want to use the word mature, elderly, you know, they get it. They understand. And certainly, you know, I'm not in that 30 or 40 year. Some of y'all think maybe no. He said no. But I agree with what you're saying. I think that's a proper step. I don't see any lights. I wouldn't mind seeing a light or two to hear what you all have to say on that. And we'll go with Member Jordan, followed by Member Nelson.
Again, I certainly agree with you. We really need to be safe about this. And just because the governor may rescind his order doesn't mean it went away. We still have a challenge here, and we need to protect ourselves. And we love each other. We really need to protect each other. For sure. So I like what we have in place. So I certainly would like to see the resolution come back and we extend it as long as possible. But make sure we protect each other. I'm still a little confused about the planning and zoning as far as the alternate members having to be there in the first place. I understand that the process is that you got to have a quorum. And if you don't have a quorum, then those alternate members will take over at that time, which means they have to be there. Right. And to me, that's just, you know, if I'm an alternate, to me, I don't need to be there. When I was on planning and zoning, I didn't have to be there, even though I never was an alternate. I was always a primary. But it just seems a little confusing to me. And some of the alternates are the ones who are concerned about being there. And I think we should do everything we possibly can to protect them. So if we got a quorum, then I think they should be able to go home and do whatever they want to protect themselves.
Thank you. Member Nelson.
I'm just going to agree with them. I think we need to be careful. I like the way the last resolution was written, so I'd like to see it continue.
Correct. And I can draft a resolution based on those elements. On the discussion about quorum, again, the law is you have to have a physical quorum.
Right.
Now remember, there's also regular members that would be needed in addition to the quorum. So it's not just alternates in a quorum. You have your quorum, you have regular members. So for P&Z, I believe a quorum is 4. There's 7, so there'll be 3 regular members, and then you have alternates. So one of the questions would be, and again, the law requires a physical quorum present regardless. The Attorney General's office has opined that if a quorum of a board is physically present, the participation of an absent member by telephone conference or other interactive electronic technology is permissible when such absence is due to extraordinary circumstances such as serious medical conditions, illness, physical disability. Now, the Attorney General has also opined that whether the absence of a member due to other reasons such as a scheduling conflict, whether that constitutes an extraordinary circumstance is a determination that can be made in the sound and reasonable judgment of the board. So that's what this discussion is what do you consider extraordinary circumstances? We are under states of emergency. The COVID is still there. So certainly you can have that discussion. So, and I think P&Z and other boards are looking for that guidance of once a physical quorum is present, at what point do you allow members or alternates outside of that physical quorum to appear virtually? Whether, what type of circumstances would you consider extraordinary to allow that to happen? And you certainly can do that. They also have to remember in doing so, they have a lot of quasi-judicial items. So if we're going to have members attending virtually, you really have to look at certain things such as the ability to hear and see evidence, to hear and see the discussion of the board, being able to provide the IT for people to call in and to handle that, and how many they can accommodate. So some of those practical concerns. So those are the kind of things you would need to consider. And I could certainly put some of these things into that resolution we discussed about procedures, would also can incorporate during this time board participation virtually.
So is PNC looking for us to define under what conditions people can be absent or people can participate?
As I see the minutes reflect that Chairman Seaver said City Council could easily adopt a resolution allowing board and commission members to attend meetings virtually. You would like to see this request conveyed to City Council.
Okay, but if the board approves somebody participating by phone because of those extraordinary circumstances, I'm not seeing where we should define what that is.
Well, all right, they're asking for council direction. Is it a matter of an individual says, I don't feel comfortable coming, I'm going to attend virtually? Is it because you're complying with protocols for quarantining or for self-isolation because you're caring for somebody who may have COVID versus maybe a member that just says, I don't feel like coming, so I'm going to call in. And I think that was the discussion. What does council see as appropriate for the board?
So in that last circumstance, I see the board saying that's not an extraordinary circumstance, therefore you can't do that.
Right, so they're looking for you as the board to give that guidance.
That's the problem.
But how, other than us sitting down, and saying A, B, C, D, E, F are extraordinary circumstances, there's always going to be that I out there. Well, what about that? I don't think we can cover everything. If you want to try to define extraordinary circumstances.
The only thing I've seen as far as the definition is what came out of the AG's office about illness, physical disability, things of that nature. But like I said, council, I think PMZ in their discussion was probably about individuals that might be in that risk category or caring for someone who is. Or following protocols, the guidelines.
If I might interject, and I think we're saying the same thing. I don't know that this is a time for us to decide what is and what isn't acceptable. Maybe there's going to be a time limit, or maybe we just run this and have once we get out of the state of emergency, maybe we readdress this. But I can tell you, I'm on the Parks and Rec board, and they're going to meet. We are going to meet together for the first time in a long time, probably since March. But they also gave the option of calling in like we've been doing, and at least 4 different people have called in, have emailed back, say, I'll be calling in. Now, I can tell you this without using any names, the 4 people that have called in so far, I would agree with them. It's like, yeah, I can see that. I get that. But why should they have to explain what perhaps their medical issue is that allows them to call in? I don't want to get to that point right now. Well, I have this. They shouldn't have to tell us all that. I would like to think they want to be here. But I also think that if they're not here, they're concerned. And at this point right now, I would like to give the people who are concerned, just like the 4 who have called into Parks and Rec and said, I'm not going to make this meeting, hopefully next month. So that's where I'm at, Member Stokel.
Yep, thank you. I actually had a couple questions about that. In regards to P&Z right now, how many were physically showing up during the state of emergency where they didn't have to come in?
I do not handle that board. I can look at the minutes. I believe the majority were physically appearing. Yeah,
and that's kind of where I was going at. I don't feel like this is an issue at this time. I feel like we're still going to have a quorum, even if somebody just doesn't feel comfortable given the COVID situation. I'm kind of with Vice Mayor, and I just don't think that's right now. I just don't think we should be doing that. I don't think it's going to be an issue. If it becomes an issue, I could see us potentially addressing it. My other question was, Member Jordan kind of brought this up. And I think we talked about this before, alternate members, is it stating right now that they have to come to the meeting even if they're not called upon yet, just in case? Because I would like to look into that if that's the case as well.
Right. The bylaws for boards are written in such a way that the chairman shall choose an alternate to serve when the need arises. Now, a lot of times that need doesn't arise until you're in the meeting. For instance, I've had situations where all the members tell staff they will be there, and they don't, and one of them doesn't show up. Either they became ill that morning, a car accident, an emergency, and you don't have all the members and you realize I need an alternate. Well, you haven't advised your alternates to be there, so now you have an empty seat because your alternates ahead of time were told they weren't needed. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you really don't know if you need an alternate until the beginning of the meeting. Another circumstance that might arise is conflicts of interest. You know, I've had situations representing boards where I have a member come to me and said, you know, I just realized I work for this business that is applying, or it's my cousin or my brother, you know, the situation that might be a conflict, or I live next door, it might be something that would constitute a conflict of interest, and they have to abstain from that item. Well, you would have your alternate come up in that case because most applicants and others would like a full board to consider their item. Now we have an empty seat because you released your alternates ahead of time, and there's no alternate to do that. I think those things certainly can be understood and discussed at the beginning of the meeting, as opposed to an alternate staying the entire meeting till you realize that. You can certainly discuss if there's conflicts at the beginning. And right now, if your alternates are going to be allowed to attend virtually, it'd be a matter of calling in at the beginning and having that discussion. But that's why the chairman for P&Z, reading the bylaws, and I agree, has that opinion that the alternate's supposed to be there for that chairman to decide, do I need an alternate, and appoint that alternate to fill in at that meeting for that purpose. And if they're not available, that can't happen.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel. I just feel like that's just asking a lot of an alternate member to show up, and just in case, especially during this time.
Well, and again, I think showing up could mean virtually.
Okay, and I'd be okay with that. I think at this time, I quite honestly wasn't aware that was happening, that they were expected to come.
Right. We just have to understand when they do quasi-judicial appearing virtually, you just got to make sure, first, from a technological aspect, that they can actually be accommodated. Second, that if they're calling in, they have the ability to see what's going on and hear what's going on, because it's quasi-judicial. As you found out in your last meeting, there might be evidence presented at a meeting, and you're going to be voting on it, and procedurally, you need to be able to see and understand that evidence and be sworn in, because quasi-judicial, you have to take an oath. You know that, and I would take note that they're not having discussions outside of that meeting with somebody else during a quasi-judicial item, that they're not receiving text from an applicant or somebody else or otherwise while they're supposed to be voting on an item. These are the things that you would be able to control when they are physically present.
Okay.
So it's just logistically things that would need to be figured out, and they can be done. So
Yeah. So I guess that's where my direction would want to go, personally.
Yeah, I think we sound to be on the same page. I would bounce back to Member Jordan as well concerning the alternates requirements, and won't get into great detail or relive it, but we got caught up in that with an alternate who had some issues because he was allegedly not there, and so it's a little ironic we're talking about this. Hey, what if they don't feel comfortable coming? We want to protect them, but that particular guy, we had the absences on him. So that'll give me some phone calls, Block.
We don't want you getting phone calls, young man.
And again, if you include that in the resolution, it would be tied to the state of emergency.
Well,
we can certainly do that
right.
if that's council's direction.
Yeah, and that was going to be my comment. But, if we have to say something, if they're looking for something, what you mentioned with the AG and the requirements there, to me, that would be where we should start, if they are looking for some type of direction. And if you want to repeat that so the council know what you're talking about.
What we talked about before is the AG. I hit that. What we talked about before was medical conditions, illnesses, physical disabilities. We can include that COVID-19 related concerns, protocols. We could certainly add that as something that if a member says, look, for these reasons, COVID generally, COVID related, or I'm caring for someone, or without going into specifics, obviously, of their care, or because we want to be careful of that. But we could generally state that, and we would tie it to the state of emergency if that's what you like to do.
I'm a little confused about what you said before, though, when you said that if we needed an alternate and they're off-site, it would be acceptable. But I thought we had to have a quorum physically at the facility.
You do, that you cannot avoid that.
All right,
You
so-
have to have a physical quorum present to do business. That's one of the concerns is that, when someone says, hey, I'm going to call in,
Right.
well, if you're that third or fourth person that says that and say, no,
Yeah.
we already have too many. So that's going to be a requirement of staff at some point to, what do you do? Because you have to have a physical quorum present or you cannot conduct business.
Right.
So that hasn't been a problem, as my understanding for the boards. Just like council, you've never failed to have a physical quorum throughout this entire
Right.
pandemic. Your planning and zoning board and other boards have, my understanding, has had quorums physically present. But that is a situation you may run to if you have only 3 members for P&Z who show up, you won't be able to conduct business. But hopefully, we can try and figure that out.
Well, that's a very good point, and one that needed to be brought up here at the end of the discussion, I think, that you have to have a physical quorum.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing we can do about that. So as much as I'm saying that I don't feel like people should have to do this, that, and the other, you still got to have a physical quorum. So I get that too. I just don't think that we're the ones to say what's excusable and what's not, and really expect the people who are calling in to say, I've got this and I can't do that. I mean, sometimes it's a little personal. So I'll leave it at that. Is there anything more we need? I think that we, even though our page isn't real clear, we're on that same page. And for my benefit or our benefit, have we given you what you need, or do we? Because I don't think anybody here wants to tell you what the specifics are. If you got a sore throat, you can stay home, but if you got an earache, you got to come on in.
I believe I have enough direction to prepare a draft resolution. Again, it'll be a resolution for your consideration and vote at your next meeting. So certainly it can be tweaked at that meeting, but I will have enough to bring to you.
Okay.
That I believe I have that direction. And I think we ought to say that in there that it is important for members to appear and be present if they can, understanding there may be situations and extraordinary circumstances, as we discussed, where they may attend virtually.
Yeah, and I agree. Attendance is important, but I think it also should be noted that there are situations where it's impossible, and where that's the case, we've got to understand that. And I'm not going to try to get into statewide philosophy on this or anything else. I'm just saying that it's not gone. So we'll leave it at that. As city manager.
Subject to any of your questions, that completes my report and discussion.
And city attorney. Okay, any more from the council? Well, I would just like to say thank you for being here. And again, I feel blessed to be here with you guys. And I know that we all feel that way. And the more times I look at different councils and get to talk to people about what's going on, the better we are. Yeah. So with that, meeting adjourned.